we have to be really careful with the advice that we're giving people. And, you know, having some background in like Reiki does not mean that you can support someone who is in a big nervous system dysregulation or is really needing like actual trauma therapy.
Yeah.
So I'm a big advocate for therapy. I've been in therapy myself for years. I see a somatic experiencing therapist every couple of weeks who's also a psychologist and a meditation teacher and other things, which is super convenient. But, you know, that helps me for even when I don't have big stuff going on, it helps me to have someone in my life who I can connect with regularly, who's just there to support me. And I'm aware that that's a privilege and not everyone, you know, has the finances to be able to devote to that. But I also know a lot of people could and would really benefit from it and choose not to. And that can make things crunchier or trickier when they're then trying to do an online group program that might cost, you know, $500 or $1,000. And then having big stuff come up or really moving through like very challenging emotions or having big responses to practices in such a way that they actually need one-on-one support. And the program can't offer it because that's not what the program is, you know? So yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And now, I mean, there are more and more trainings for trauma-informed facilitation. There are more and more short courses around this stuff, which I think is really helpful. And there are more people talking about like trauma-informed approaches, not just from the perspective of like having a trauma specialist in your program, but from the perspective of how you run your business. You know, are you really pushing the scarcity? Are you promising something you can't deliver? Because that's not actually trauma-informed. Are you, you know, not open to receive feedback from people who have had problems with the way that you work? Because that's not trauma-informed, you know, all of that. What are your structures and systems for feedback? How do you create community in your spaces? How do you not shame people? How do you make it inclusive for people of diverse backgrounds? You know, there's a lot. And I think we're really just at the start of what that looks like. Because as you know, with the embodiment and sexuality field, it's not regulated. And so it is a bit like the Wild West, anyone can do anything, which in some ways is great and in other ways is really a problem, you know?
Yeah, I anticipate that trauma-informed practice is going to be more and more a thing in our field. It's just going to grow, and people will have an expectation of a certain standard of as trauma education goes into the public, like people are just going to expect that there are tighter policies and practices and approaches in these very activating containers. And it can be a bit intimidating for someone who's just starting out in the industry, not knowing what does it even mean? What do I have to do? Should I just not run anything? I'm afraid of taking risks. But this work is really important. And you know, people who have transformative practices like embodiment and breath work and sexuality, there might be 3 people in the room that have an adverse response and 30 people whose lives are changed for the better forever. So I still think it's really important for people to go out on the fringes and do these weird practices and bring people in. But I think if you're going to do it, there's a few basic things that are really important to do to keep people safe. And the first is just being careful who you let into your programs. Like checking, is this person likely to have a psychotic breakdown?
Right.
And if not, then they probably shouldn't participate. Having an actual selection criteria. And the second thing is knowing the limits of your practice. Like, what are the signs that tell you when you need to refer someone onwards to someone else? And who is that person? Do they need to work with a psychologist? Are they already working with a psychologist? And to have these things in place, just like plans for when things happen, so that when you run your practice, you can know that you've got your bases covered.